Happy Friday, my cool cats and kittens, and welcome to our daily overview video. Today it's going to be a bit of a longer video, but I promise it's worthwhile, so stay tuned. You have two agenda items for the day. Number one, you need to watch this video. Hey, you're already doing that. Awesome job. And complete part one of the Tinker versus Des Moines case analysis. It looks like this. Afterwards, you're going to complete part two of the Tinker versus Des Moines case analysis using your summary from yesterday. Okay, let's get started. What are you going to find in this video? You asked this longer video. You're going to find a recap of the Tinker case. After that, you're going to find an overview of Supreme Court terms and the layout of the actual Supreme Court. And finally, you're going to find specific directions and maybe some free answers to part two, the case analysis, which is what you are working on today, so stay tuned. Okay, so let's learn first and foremost about Tinker. What happened? In 1965, this young lady, Mary Beth Tinker, organized a nonviolent protest during which her and her group friends of activists would wear these incredibly controversial, gasp, armbands to school in protest of the Vietnam War. The principal of the school, that is a historically accurate picture of the principal in case you're wondering, said, "You can't wear those armbands. That is in violation of our school policy and that will cause a classroom disruption to learning." Mary Beth Tinker said, "Nah, I'm going to wear them anyway." And she got suspended for 5 days. In response, Mary Beth's parents, who were pretty woke by the way, decided they're not going to let that fly. So they decided to sue the school district for violating her First Amendment rights. In response, the courts of Iowa, and by the way, that is the state Supreme Court of Iowa. That is a pretty good looking courthouse, if you ask me. Sort of like in Shrek. Yes, Shrek. When Donkey says, "I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder." Instead, though, it's, "I like that courthouse. That is a nice courthouse." My jokes are a lot less funny when no one is laughing. I mean, no one usually laughs, but like really no one is laughing anymore. Anyway, I digress. So it goes to the state, and the state says, we actually stay on the side of the school district, and they have the power to make these decisions on their own. They have the discretion. And there's Mr. Principal. "See, I told you." Well, unfortunately for them, they had a plan up their sleeves. The case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Yes, I am trying too hard to make these slideshows interesting because I want viewership. Okay, you're welcome. Anyway, but what actually happens in the Supreme Court that is such a big deal? If you remember from before, it's not televised, so it's kind of hard to figure out actually what is happening. So I'm going to give you all that I have. All right, first and foremost, we need to start with some terms. So at this point, you're going to pause the video and I need you to go and find today's assignment because you're going to actually take some notes alongside this video. So go to social studies. Hey, that's me. That's actually what I look like. And you're going to find where it says Tinker versus Des Moines case analysis. Click on that assignment. And then you need to open up that beautiful attachment and throw that into Notability. After you do that, you are ready to go. So again, pause the video, go find those, and then you're going to continue with this video. All right, so before we jump in, I need to give you some terms, some background terminology, which by the way, you should have seen in your Tinker versus Des Moines reading. I sort of sent you in there blind, and a lot of your annotations and questions that I saw in there were about some of these terms. So I'm going to answer some of those questions here. Okay, number one, attorney. What is an attorney? An attorney is also known as a lawyer, or in terms of the Bill of Rights, counsel, who represents clients, prepares arguments, and interviews witnesses. So I need you to copy down that definition in the top of that activity. So again, a synonym for attorney is lawyer or counsel. Okay. Now, there are two types of attorneys. There is a prosecuting attorney and a defense attorney. The prosecution is the team of attorneys working to prove someone called the plaintiff's rights have been violated. They are the side of the argument trying to raise a complaint against someone else, against another party. They are always the first name in a case title. For example, Brown versus Board of Education. Brown was the name of the prosecuting side, the plaintiff, Brown. Okay? So again, the prosecution is the side raising the complaint. On the other side is the defense. This is the team of attorneys working to prove the defendant did not violate the rights of the plaintiff. They are the other side. They are defending themselves. So the defendant is then, the person or persons defending themselves in court who have been accused of violating the other party's rights. They are always the second name in the case title. So Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, right? Okay. The one side versus the other. Okay, once you get all 5 of those terms then, I need you to jot down the next key term, which you already saw, which is precedent. A precedent are the previous cases that cover similar concepts that are used by the justices to make their decision. Precedent is what they use then to determine if they're either going to stick with what was done before or decide something new and overturn the precedent. Okay, then the final word is opinion. You've heard that word before, but in the case of a courtroom, the opinion is actually the written explanations delivered by the Supreme Court justices explaining their reasoning behind their decision. There are 2 types of opinions, the majority, which is the winning side, and the dissent, which is the losing side. So again, majority. Why? Because more of them voted on that side. Dissent, the dissenters, they are the losing side. Both of them write their positions out, and that's what gets published to the world. We don't get written or audio clips from the arguments happening between the Supreme Court justices. We don't get video clips. We don't get really anything. And in fact, if you ask a Supreme Court justice what they think about a case, they'll tell you nothing. That is because the only thing we are supposed to get from the unbiased court is the opinion. These are the terms you need to know, but let's figure out what this looks like in an actual courtroom. This is the Supreme Court of the United States. Not exactly, but this is how it looks. All right, so number 1, these are our Supreme Court justices. There are how many of them? 9 Supreme Court justices. They sit up here. In the center is the Chief Justice, John Roberts. And then I don't know if I know the exact seating right now, but typically it's based off of seniority. Okay, those are our 9 justices. Imagine how intimidating that is. Then if you have your argument, you're one of the attorneys, and you go up to make your argument, you have to stand at the lectern, which is right here at the podium, and make your argument to all of those very formidable people who are going to grill you with a bunch of questions or just sit silently and judge you. Yes. All right. Then 3, these are the prosecuting attorneys. This is their team here, okay, or attorney if there's one. That's the side raising the complaint. Now, at that spot right next to them then, 3A, that is the plaintiff. That is the person raising the complaint. In the case of Tinker versus Des Moines, that's where Mary Beth Tinker would sit. Okay? Then number 4, that's the defense. The side trying to defend themselves against Mary Beth Tinker, that would be the Des Moines Independent School District. Now, from there, there's a bunch of other spots here as well. Back here are some other lawyers, people that might even help out with the case from time to time, depending on how big it is. The judge's guests, which interestingly enough includes their family members and things which are allowed to see this. General seating back here, but you're only, in the general seating, you have to stay for a long time. You can't leave, come and go. And then 8 back here are these random little seats. These guys, you can only stay for 3 to 5 minutes. So that's a lot of times what politicians will do. People from Congress will come and sit in for a few minutes and then they'll leave, depending on the case. Over here are the law clerks. These are the people that really do the heavy lifting in the Supreme Court, the ones who actually have to write everything, research everything, all that jazz. That's where they sit. I know it's kind of tough. They're off to the side. And then over here, this is the media. Depending on how big the case is, that will determine how many sort of media members are allowed in. Oftentimes, it is up to the discretion of the Supreme Court about how many are in. There are no video recordings, none of that. And oftentimes, if the case is too big of a deal, they won't actually let much media in at all, and they will have to sit out here on the steps, and they have to wait for people to come out and tell them what happened. Okay, anyway, very secretive place. That's how it works in reality. Now, let's move on to the next part, which is what you're going to be working on today. All about Mary Beth Tinker, Tinker versus Des Moines. You're going to be breaking down the case and actually using these terms to break it down into these different elements to basically compare it then eventually with all of the other Supreme Court cases that have happened. All right, so First and foremost, the first box, name of case / date. You know this, it's Tinker versus Des Moines, and the date is 1969. Plaintiff, remember that is the person raising the complaint. That's Mary Beth Tinker. And the defendant on the other side, that is the Des Moines Independent School District. My goodness, those are all answers that you can copy right from this video. You're welcome. Now, in this is where you're going to find information from the case summary to fill in this portion. I want you to summarize facts of the case, who, what, when, where kind of stuff, and be sure to use those key terms whenever possible. So instead of saying Tinker or Mary Beth or a student, say plaintiff and defendant. Say defense, say prosecution. Say all of those really key words as much as you possibly can. Okay. Which amendment or right is being referenced here? I just mentioned it earlier in the video, but here's my hint. It's an amendment. Okay. The next part, precedent. Remember, those are those previous cases. The case was called Stromberg versus California. Then you're going to use other information here to tell me what happened in that precedent case, but also how does that precedent case apply to the Tinker case, and also how is it different? Okay. All right, then the last part here. I want you to explain the final ruling of the case, including the number of votes for each position. In your reading, it gave you a number, and I saw in one of my students' annotations that she wrote she didn't know what the numbers represented. The votes are representing how many people on each side voted of the justices. So in this case, 7 justices voted in the majority side, and 2 voted on the dissenting side. And in the last 2 paragraphs, they summarize those positions. I want you to fill that information in here. All right, with that, we are done. This is definitely a challenge. I'm asking you to dissect a real Supreme Court case all on your own, but you can do it. On Monday, I will hold office hours to help if you have any lingering questions. Otherwise, email me until then. I will respond. Good luck. You've got this. Have a lovely weekend.